Welcome to First Garden New Gardener. I'm Joy Baird. During the growing season, maintaining your crops will ensure them to have the best success for harvest all the way up till frost, or if you kill it. We're in our tomato patch here, and we do this every 2 to 3 weeks. What we do is we trim the lower 6 to 8 inches of limbs and leaves coming off the base. We have some weeds in here that we're going to move out, but you can see here we've got this tomato plant. It's not growing vertical because we're on this floor to weave method of utilizing the string instead of a cage. So what we want to do is anywhere that there are any leaves or limbs potentially touching the ground or could be touching the ground, we'll go ahead and cut them out. The reason being is we want good air circulation. Also the weeds here, get them out of the way. We want good air circulation, and we want to reduce the amount of leaves and limbs that can potentially have soil splashing up on them. Soil, even though we are mulching, contains a lot of bad bacteria that can affect the health and well-being of your tomato plant. So by limiting the amount of potential splash up, that's going to inhibit, or it's going to help your tomato plants to grow even better. Now we've got a cluster here of tomatoes, very nice that they are still forming. We do have some up here that are turning. Now, in other maintenance recommendations on your tomato plants, even if they are slightly orange, you can still harvest them if they're potentially going to be red. Some varieties are only orange or only yellow or only white. But anytime you see the color begin to change, you can harvest them, bring them inside in a window or on the kitchen counter, and in 2 or 3 days they will be ripe. I've got a number of them in here, these little grape or cherry varieties, however you want to describe it. I do have a large one in here I want to show. This is, I believe it's an Amish paste. You can see this is not nearly ready in ripeness, but the ripeness begins to develop at the base of your tomato plant and works its way up. So if you have problems with squirrels or people, if you're a community garden or wherever it is, of harvesting or getting into your fruit before it's ripe, you can certainly harvest it as you see the color change. We'll bring this inside, and in about 2 to 3 days, it'll be as if it was ripe on the vine. Now you can let it ripen on the vine if you have no issues with insects or people coming and harvesting your produce. But it's another thing that you can harvest it when it's early. Also, we'll go on the other side and we'll show some other things that we're doing on our tomatoes. On this side here, I've trimmed out. You can see a much better indication of what I'm explaining, as these plants are more vertical as they hang on the string. Up there, the plants are just kind of growing in a big shrub-like procedure, which is fine. It doesn't matter, but for the illustration purposes, I wanted to show you that we clean out the bottom. Then we'll take grass clippings and we'll lay in here on top of our irrigation system, and that will help suppress the weeds and hold the moisture in. What you want to avoid is taking grass clippings that are green that you just mowed and throw in here, as they can harbor diseases. If they are not dry, they can mold and create other issues for your tomato plant. If your tomato plant has early blight on it, there's a technique in which you can fix that or reduce the amount of early blight that you have, and we'll take a look at that in the container we have in the central portions of our garden. This here is a tomato plant we have in a container in the garden. It's not hooked up to the irrigation system whatsoever. We have pine cones here to limit the squirrels from getting in here and chewing and digging up the soil. Now this discoloration right here, this is the sign of early blight. Early blight is a bad bacteria that lives in your soil. And as the soil splashes up on the plants, it will progressively work up the plant, and by the end of the season you get fruit, vine, and no leaves on the plant. So what you can do is, in this situation, where your plants may be, we can trim up to 25%, even 30% of any infected parts of the plant. Like this limb here, I'm just going to take that little bit off. And also this plant is dehydrated, as you can see the wiltiness of it. So then what we do here is we'll get all this trimmed off, any infected leaves. The discoloration is yellow to brown to dead, and then we can do 2 things in order to discourage the early blight from splashing up. One, keep the bottom portion of the plant trimmed off here like I'm doing here. May look dramatic, but it's not going to hurt the plant. It's actually going to encourage more growth of the plant, and then we'll hydrate this. But also you can take yellow whole grain cornmeal and sprinkle around the base. That has a beneficial bacteria in it called trichoderma that will help fight the early blight that's in your soil. You can water it in, it doesn't affect it whatsoever. It'll still do what it needs to perform in order to help fight that early blight that's in the soil. And then we can mulch on top with actual grass clippings or straw or shredded leaves, whatever you have. And that's a couple of ways in which you can maintain your tomato plants in a raised bed, in a container, in the ground, all the way through the season until frost kills it or you kill. Thanks for watching. I'm Joy Barrett. This has been First Garden, New Gardener. As always, remember to rate, subscribe, and comment.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.